Hey guys, my name's Ellen for those of you who don't know me, and this video is going to be a little bit different than the ones I normally make. Um, I'm just feeling really inspired by something I read a couple of nights ago in this book, which is called Spiritual Bypassing by Robert Augustus Masters. And as I tend to like to do, I just picked it up and flipped open to a page to see what the universe wanted to tell me. And what I found, I feel to be really profound for me personally at this point in my journey, but also really in line with the energies I'm feeling with this full moon that we're having in Scorpio, and with the sun and Mercury being in Taurus, the opposite sign. And I'll say more about that in a minute, but I thought what would be really good is just to read the passage exactly as I turn to it, and really just to open up this discussion of what he's talking about. The author is, like I said, Robert Augustus Masters. I was first introduced to this book actually in 2017 by a wonderful astrologer and teacher named Divine Harmony. She was the lunar cycle guide in the Astrology Hub Inner Circle, and she suggested this as our recommended reading. And I'll be really honest, I bought it and I read the chapter entitled, I'm going to read y'all the chapter title. It was called Neither Romancing Nor Fleeing Relationship, and it hit really close to home, we'll say that, and really brought up a lot for me and a lot that I wasn't ready to deal with. And so I just neatly tucked the book away on the bookshelf. And yeah, just the other day it was calling to me and I pulled it down. And like I said, this is what I turned to. So I turned to page 127, which if you know me personally, you know I love numbers, and the eclipse that we have coming up on July 2nd is from Saros series, which is families of eclipses that happen every 18 years, 11 days and 8 hours. And the one we have on July 2nd is going to be in Saros series 127. So I thought that was a cool synchronicity. So the chapter that this passage is from is called Disembodied Spirituality and Embodied Being. And it goes like this. And this is the middle of the chapter, keep in mind. In looking at our body, we may find ourselves looking down upon it. And not just geographically, but is it really down there? Is our belly really below us? Our legs? And if so, from whose point of view? When we view our body from the vantage point of our cranial headquarters, it may very well seem as if we are above it, when in fact all we have done is separate our head from the rest of our body, with our neck caught in between. No wonder so many of us have neck problems. I know I do. When I do hands-on work with clients' necks during psychotherapy, it usually doesn't take long for them to experience much more of an energetic flow between their head and torso, often accompanied by considerable emotional release and insight into what is giving them a pain in the neck. Reducing the body to the status of a concretized it is somatic estrangement. And if we are thus estranged, out of touch with our own body, we are going to have great difficulty relating with sufficient sensitivity and ecological savvy to our collective body, the body of nature, regardless of our philosophy. Our tendency to talk about our body as a separate entity reveals the pervasive nature of our mind-body disconnect. It gets sick, old, infirm. It isn't attractive enough, healthy enough, strong or resilient enough. It betrays us, embarrasses, or disobeys us. In short, it brings us down. The litany continues. The body is unpredictable, unreasonable, too hot or too cold, too tired or too wired, too thick or too thin, too this or too that, constantly demanding to be filled, then emptied, then filled and emptied again, again and again, making trouble. The very I, for whom the body is just an it, may successfully masquerade as the real us, but it is just an assembly of habits in the habit of referring to itself as I, a personified interiority that has been allowed to squat on the throne of self. This I acts as if it is a tenured indweller, but it is little more than a cult of one, however rational it may seem. Because of its lack of somatic anchoring and attunement, this I is poorly informed about our basic needs. And given its estrangement from feeling, it tends to be dry and overly abstract, typically favoring the intellectual over the experiential, the dispassionate over the passionate, the objective over the subjective. Regardless of its smarts, disembodied rationality is too committed to mental inquiry to have a genuinely beneficial impact on any significant scale. It is too busy dissecting and categorizing to have any intimacy with the messy, raw feelings and emotions that might taint its sterilized sanctums. Such rationality is really an irrational rationality, disconnected as it is from somatic and emotional reality. We need to stop looking up to such rationality, lacking as it does the ground from which to cast an integrated eye on anything. There is a wisdom in the body, a wisdom in feeling, that when accessed and allowed to operate in conjunction with our cognitive capacities leads to a deeper, wiser, more integrated life. So we need to get back to the body, which involves much more than just dropping it off at the yoga class or fitness facility or medical office. We can get our body more flexible, more fit, and more powerful, and we can load it up with the finest supplements and organic fare and still be out of touch with it. Getting back to the body means doing whatever is needed to cut through our disembodied experience, which in part means a journey into and through the very pain that first drove us to disown and disassociate from our body. I'm going to stop there, even though it goes on. And I highly recommend getting this. I'm thinking about doing a series of videos where I just pick passages and we open up the discussion, and you can comment on how it has shown up in your personal life, how you see it showing up in the collective, in the community, in the spiritual community, in your own local community, family, friends, whatever it is. But that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight, is just how I've seen this play out in my own life and how I see it playing out right now in the collective, and especially in the spiritual community, and how, starting with ourselves, we need to bring light to this, bring awareness, and not in a judgmental way or a self-condemning way, not in a way that fuels the inner critic to, tell us that we've done it all wrong, and in a way that's just with a lot of compassion and awareness, and what's a good word? I think just a lot of openness, openness and willingness. That's a good word. To just look really honestly at how we've done this and how we can begin to talk openly about this in the community and begin to turn this around. And so I know for me, for those of you that know astrology, I have a Gemini rising and I have a lot of Pisces. And so for me, it's been a couple of different ways of escaping the body and escaping the feelings and escaping the things that were trying to speak to me in my body, such as, different ailments and just strange illnesses that would pop up in the last few years during this journey that were really asking me to slow down, to get out of my head, to really feel into what was coming up, old traumas, old patterns that were becoming very clear, these sicknesses and illnesses and pains and different things in my body were trying to communicate that there was a need to look deeper, to feel deeper, not to just find more knowledge or find another spiritual practice or another spiritual teacher to fix it or to solve it or to help me understand it up here, but that my body was speaking in a very real way, saying, I have some answers for you that you keep searching for outside. I have some answers right here, and I'm trying to tell you to listen, to tune in, to slow down. And I'm very stubborn and obstinate, and I like using my intelligence. I like information. I like knowledge and reading about things and exploring things with my mind, and have always had a tendency also with the Pisces to sort of want to escape into my mind and escape into the higher realms of consciousness and sort of forget about the very real earthly things that were happening in my life that were asking to be acknowledged and given love to, given caring to. And so I think he says it really well in his dedication of this book. So he says that this book is for all those whose longing to be truly free is becoming stronger than their desire to distract themselves from suffering. We do lots of different things. I have done lots of different things to distract from my suffering, whether it be various times in my life of using substances or relationships, or even positive things like taking running to the extreme and going from never running in my whole life to training for a 5K and then within a year and a half doing a full marathon, taking things to the extreme. And even though that was very much using my body, it was also for me very much a way to check out from my life, and pushing my body to these extreme measures as an escape from things that were going on in my home, things that were going on within me as a new mom, and all of the challenges that brings. That's a huge life transition for a woman, also for a man when he becomes a parent, but specifically for a woman with her body and just the emotional aspect of having a being that is dependent on you for life-giving nourishment, if you're breastfeeding, for the 9 months in the womb that you are literally housing a developing human in your body, and your body is no longer your own. And so I came to running right after I had my first child, and for me it was an escape. And it's so interesting because in society we like to label certain things, certain addictions as better or worse than others, instead of just calling them what they are, which is they're just coping mechanisms. They're just ways to deal with the very real stresses that come along with trying to figure out life, and trying to process and handle all of the things that come across our path that are difficult and painful and traumatic. And so for me, this book, because I do intend now to read it all, and I do intend also to do a video on the first chapter where he explains what spiritual bypassing is, because some of you guys may have never heard that term. This may be new. Maybe you've heard of shadow work, but you haven't heard of a very real shadow that exists in spirituality itself, or in a lot of people who are seeking spirituality as an answer to maybe disillusionment from organized religion, or as an answer to the pain that they're feeling from a crisis in life. And so spiritual bypassing, in the most basic sense, is when spirituality is used to avoid pain versus being used as a way to live a more integrated life, to be more connected to self and others and God, universe, whatever you want to call this organizing life essence, electricity, energy that pervades our experience, So I hope this is making sense. I feel like I'm sort of going off on tangents, but specifically how I see this showing up for me and for the collective and for this community that, I've been a part of for a few years now, is that there's all this talk of ascension and ascending and moving into the fifth dimension and, all of this stuff that's very conceptual and heady. And I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm not judging. But I think where we as a community are missing the mark a bit, or where we're needing to bring some light and awareness to, is that part of this journey is also about spirit descending. We chose to come to Earth at this time of great transition, at this time of great turmoil on Earth. And we chose to be in physical bodies so that spirit can come down, not so that we can go up, so that we can bring that energy down into here, just like Jesus and these other enlightened masters talked about, that the kingdom of heaven is within, in our bodies, in our hearts, where the electric and the magnetic meet, and that electromagnetic organ physically is where those two energies meet, and I guess I'll tie it in now to the full moon. And I wanted to show y'all the full moon real quick because it's so freaking gorgeous. I'm sitting in my backyard. I'm going to point the camera up. It's so pretty. So, okay, let me get the chat box off here. I don't know what happened. So anyway, so the two signs that are really being activated in this full moon are Scorpio, where the moon is, and Taurus, where the sun is, and also where Mercury is, and Uranus, and now Venus. Okay, so a lot of energy in Taurus, which is an earth sign. which is the first earth sign, which can even be looked at for me as Gaia herself, you know, as a representation of matter, mother. You know, the word matter comes from the root word that's the same root word as mother. And so it is the yin energy, the dark matter, the substance. You know, I'm like rubbing my fingers together. It's the stuff we can feel, the material world, the solid reality, right? And Scorpio on the other side is a water sign. Okay, so it's also feminine. It's also this yin energy, and it's asking with this water and earth energy for us to really, really feel into our bodies and to really be in our bodies. And where I think the electric part comes in is with Uranus and Taurus. And I think this whole transit is about reuniting spirit and matter. And in mythology, Oranos, which is the other word for Uranus, and Gaia, they were married. They were divine partners. And so, you know, this separation that has happened between spirit and matter, and that has been perpetuated by organized religion that says spirit exists above you, outside of you, that we are beneath spirit, that we are less than and below. That has gone on for millennia. And I think what this transit is asking us is to be present and loving of our physical existence, of our physical bodies, and to create a safe container for spirit to descend down here and really to be able to flow in and through us and out into the world in a way that is healing, in a way that is palpable and present, and that, you know, really radiates out from within and from the center, but in a very embodied way, you know, not in a way that's conceptual and heady, but that in a way that when we walk through our lives, even in the mundane, and we walk into the grocery store and we have a smile and a kind word for the cashier or for the person in the parking lot that steals our parking space or whatever it is, you know, just that we're carrying spirit. We're allowing spirit to be present in all those moments because we are present, you know, because we are in our bodies. And I don't know, you know, I'm going to watch this back probably and then not want to post it, but I think I'm just going to post it because I think this stuff needs to be said. And I think that I'm saying it to myself because I know it's been true for me that I've wanted in many ways, in all kinds of ways. I've hit a wall in every single way, trying to avoid really feeling so much pain that has accumulated over a lifetime and probably many lifetimes of not being able to fully express, of feeling restricted, of feeling shame, guilt, all kinds of very dense emotions that felt too heavy. They felt like if I actually allowed them to fully express, that I would just like disintegrate and die, you know, like that's how intense my emotions have been at times. And so what has happened over the course of my journey the past few years is that something would come up, I would start to feel into it, and then I would go straight to the head. Well, let me figure this out. Let me figure out how I can fix this. I don't want to feel this way. And it would be off to the next thing to distract myself with. Even though it was spiritual, you know, it was a new spiritual practice or a new spiritual teacher or a new spiritual philosophy or whatever it was. And it's not that I didn't learn and don't continue to learn and you know, remember amazing things about the nature of reality and consciousness, and that I will ever stop learning and growing in that way. But what has happened is that the more and more that I can allow myself, when I'm feeling some really dark stuff to come up, the more that I allow it and I own it and I feel it, the release that comes from that and the space that opens up each time that I do it. And there's still times where I want to avoid it or I do avoid it. But my goal and what I'm working on, and maybe you can relate to this, is just making the time shorter and shorter of the sort of running and distracting and avoiding period, because eventually it comes up again anyway. And so it's like, how many times am I going to run into a brick wall before I just allow this stuff to move through? Because it's all just energy, right? That's what the whole universe is made of. And so when it's blocked, when it's stuck, when it's not allowed to move, when it's repressed and pushed down, not only does it stagnate growth that I found, but it also builds up. Because what happens, like when pressure builds up, like in a tea kettle, right? Then when it's released, it's a lot more intense. And the feelings feel a lot more, you know, like I'm picturing just a, like a volcano or an explosion. Whereas if in the times where I just allow myself to release them as they come up, even though it's still intense or it's painful or it's uncomfortable, it is so much less explosive and so much less unpleasant for those in my life and for me. And so I just share that to say, like, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still learning, but like these are things that I've learned along the way. And so if my experience can help anybody out there that maybe feels like there are things that they haven't yet dealt with and maybe feel some shame around or just don't know how to deal with it, that you're not alone and we're all going through it. And, you know, it's just important, I think, to give voice to it in whatever way you can. So whether that's with a trusted friend or whether that's with, a counselor, a therapist, a teacher, somebody that you trust, a family member, making yourself a video, even if you never publish it, but just giving voice to it takes so much of the fear energy away. It takes so much more of the words are becoming more difficult as I go on. I think it just takes some of the scariness away, you know? It's like once you just say it, it's like, okay, like I can acknowledge this, I can deal with it, I can survive, it's not going to kill me. And that's how we build resiliency. You know, it's like we do the things we think we can't do, and then the next time we're faced with something we think we can't do, we have one more reference point that we can say, well, wait, I didn't think I could do that thing, and I did. And after I did it, I felt stronger, and I felt better, and I felt relief and release. And so maybe I can do this too. And that's how resiliency builds and builds and builds. And we realize that we really are capable of feeling all of it and walking through it and walking through that fire, you know, that fire of purification, but also just that fire of, I mean, the word like burning hell is coming to me because it feels like a burning hell sometimes when you're facing those shadowy aspects, you know, those things that you haven't wanted to face, the skeletons in the closet or the monsters under the bed or whatever you want to call them, you know, because they can seem very real and very big and very scary. And so I'm just here to say that, you know, there is a way through, and if this is something that you want to learn more about, I really like sharing, and I really want to read more out of this book and discuss it. So if that's something you're interested in, just, you know, comment below or shoot me a message, and hopefully this has been helpful. And I'm wishing you all a beautiful, happy full moon. It's going to be a deep one. Scorpio is known for being, you know, sort of the deepest, darkest sign, but it's also the sign of transformation, and it's the sign of the phoenix that rises from the ashes. So it's really positive in that way, right? Because that's the goal, is that we're evolving and we're transforming. We're becoming more of who we are and who we came here to be. And so the gift of Scorpio is that gift of transformation. And that's what I'm wishing for all of you on this night, is blessed transformation. Peace be with you all.